بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. So inshallah today is the case study session for the third week. Inshallah we'll be tackling different questions today. Inshallah is regarding the religious view and the response. Um, for this occasion, we know that tomorrow is Ramadan, so Ramadan Kareem for everybody, and to everybody I mean, and inshallah may Allah help us to take it as opportunity and to seize it, to contemplate, to have this khalwa, to have this moment with ourselves and moment with God, beyond the format of the Taraweeh in the masjid, beyond the format of going to the mosque, beyond the format of having people doing iftar with you, or you are invited to other people, I mean. So that's a good occasion for us. We need to seize it and to take this opportunity seriously, as this is a chance. It doesn't happen every year. It maybe it's once in the whole life. And we need to seize the opportunity of having this corona and to look at it from the opportunity perspective, because it gives us this chance to do this type of shift in our focus, in our habit and the routine and the worship, the format of the worship that we used to have. That's one thing, and Ramadan Kareem to everybody here. So moving to the topic of today. So what we have, we are tackling as big the title, the response of different religion and views. This is the views of those religions. It's not, we are not talking on behalf of specific religions, but there are views and multiple views within the same religion anyways. And we want just to explore those views and to talk about them from kind of Maqasid perspective, and from kind of the outcome and how we are dealing with their outcome as responses, dealing with us as believers and either Muslim, dealing with the internal affairs of the religious kind of management and everything. So what we have here, we have 4 items that we will be tackling inshallah today. It's the first one is about spiritual and mystic view, reading in terms of reflection by Dr. Or Sheikh Abdal Hakim Murad. This is a view. We need to take it and we need to look at it critically and to approach what make it a little bit different and specific. There is a religious view that we want our Sheikh Navaid to tackle, which is related to trials and punishment, which is al-ibtila wal-iqab, when it comes to this corona, and why this type of question is raised in different ways between different religions, and more of that in the Islamic kind of shuyukh and movements. The third one is more about the religious internal affairs management when it comes to the worship, when it comes to the places where we are going to the worship and so on. How critical this view of this religious response to this question. And we need to tackle it critically to see how we are dealing with it from Maqasid perspective. And the last one, which is the religious fatwa crisis, when it comes to deal with the situation and the complexity of the situation in order to link the dots and come up with something more consistent and make more sense in terms of objectives. So as introduction, I want just to introduce perspective. And here, as we are studying the Maqasid, we talked at one point in our first week, we talked about the fact and the fake news and conspiracy theory and so on, which is kind of prerequisite. We cannot deal with any situation unless if we have kind of, if we are dealing with real fact and data. This is one thing, and we tackled that kind of elaborately, and Brother Nordin gave us good insight there and methodology and even a model how we can look at it. Now, as we are moving, we are asking from practical way, what is the what is the maqsad of studying maqasid for the pandemic? What is kind of the high level maqsad? Why we need even the maqasid to bring it into the plate in order to tackle the pandemic? And this is kind of the question that we start answering in the last week by bringing the ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا as cross-verse kind of meaning in a lot of places in the Quran. All what's happened to us from the maut and hayat, from the being alive and being human and being responsible and being dealing with this life, we are in this trial to check how far we can distinguish what is the best deed that we can deal with. And we brought this view as maqasid. We said that maybe we can go a little bit further than the fiqh view when they are talking about what is the best deed that you can deal with, and be kind of contextualized in the moment and be contextualized in the specific action that you are dealing. We want just to go one layer upper and to say, oh, the best deed is the one that fits the most urgent objective of the religion. So you need to go from just to shift your perspective to look at the best deed and to approach maqasid as perspective in order to select your best deed and move on. And based on that, we brought many actions as best deed when it comes to deal with the psychological fact, from coping to thriving, from the intellectual part, from just resisting to kind of facing this kind of growth in terms of focusing and bringing the calm to oneself and moving ahead in building new capabilities that you don't have chance to build unless if you have circumstance and situation and condition that we have right now. We went even further to build the kind of social and to bring something different from this maqasid. And we said, oh, this is the best deed from the objective perspective in dealing with the situation there. So today is just moving a little bit from that perspective of doing the best deed to acquiring some level of meaning and cohesion when it comes to deal with the situation. So as we are dealing with the situation, we are using maqasid to question why even we have the corona happening as event in our life. And this is maqsad beyond, this maqsad of al-khalq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created those phenomena, created those events, created all that stuff, and it's happened for a reason. And that reason we need to contemplate, to absorb it, to have it incorporated in our way we think, so we can deal with it positively. So this is acquiring some level of meaning in order to move on. So the maqasid here are coming to bring the right question, to reconcile the different perspective, to extract the right meaning for yourself. And here meaning, it comes from different kind of level. And this is kind of the ultimate kind of goal for the session of today. It's like how we can reconcile contradictory meaning coming from these religious responses or institution responses dealing with the dilemma, and how we can question it, how we can deal with that kind of level of complexity and ambiguity also. So from this perspective, just I want to throw some questions and some reflections coming into this discussion here, which is acquire the meaning and cohesion in the individual level, so you can take responsibility. You don't take responsibility, it's and the first kind of reason is just because you didn't reconcile what is the meaning of the event. And if you don't get the right meaning, maybe you can deal with the situation as catastrophic and just waiting for it to move on in order to start acting again. Or maybe you are just all the time, you are skipping your presence in this situation just to focus on what is coming after pandemic and saying to yourself, oh, this is the great question. And this is kind of one of the views. One of the views that's coming into the religion is just deal with it as catastrophic and deal with it as musiba, and deal with it in the way that you are facing it, you are resisting, and you are waiting for it to move on in order to be active again. In the other side, there are some religions view that are coming into the plate to tell you, oh no, stop. This is your moment. This is your chance. You don't have this challenge before in order to question your conditions. So deal with the situation from this new condition in order to liberate yourself. Liberate yourself from your attachment with other people, with other brothers physically, with the location physically, with the situation to do the right deed kind of outside your house. Just move on from that perspective and find the essence and attach yourself to the essence instead of the format. This is one, this is kind of two different views that are coming there. Another kind of issue that we are dealing with when it comes to the religious response to this pandemic is their absence of tackling the issue of theology aspect of having pandemic in this life. I mean, why we need to have pandemic and having people die, kind of dealing with the situation. Some of them are passing away, some of them are getting sick, some of them, they don't have anything to do with the situation as is, and they are getting this pandemic in their life. And especially with the movement of this atheism, or with the movement of contemplating of the essence of the shar, and the evil dealing in this life. So that's kind of one of the topic that we saw in our kind of expecting some answers and the response and interaction, specifically with the context that we have, specifically with the context of type of question that's coming from the context. I mean, the third dilemma that we are dealing with in terms of those responses is the double logic. It's like double logic in dealing with the situation when it's kind of happening to us. Oh, we call it ibtila. Oh, this is ibtila, this is ikhtibar, this is trial. Let's deal with it, and you are moving forward. And when it's happened to the others, oh, this is punishment. Did you see what they did for kind of in China with Uyghur place? Did you see what they did? This is why it's happened to them. And we saw a lot of kind of religious kind of faces and celebrities coming just to deal with the situation from this perspective. Did you see that iqab is happening? And it's not only from the Islam perspective though. It's happening also from the Christian perspective. Oh, this is the sin of people are not getting aligned with the commandment of Allah, and we have a lot of LGBTs and we have a lot of gays, and this is why it's happening, that stuff. And we saw the same thing happening from Jewish and other institutions. I mean. So just taking it as a perspective and as a human being dealing with the situation, why the religious mindset is jumping to this double logic in order to say, oh, we are the good people and the other one are the bad, and this is happening because of them, and something kind of ambiguous and kind of not making yourself kind of cohesive, extracting cohesive meaning for yourself dealing with the situation. The third one here, what I want to bring is the ambiguity in managing the internal affairs. When we see Azhari shuyukh just dealing with the situation, if you are healthy, why you need to stop to go to the mosque, and why you need to stop to you already go to get your food and stuff. What does it mean? The food is better than the religion? And this is kind of the discourse that we have. This is kind of the message that we are throwing out there into the society, in nurturing this ambiguity between having clear opinion that help people to take the right action and extract the right meaning, and to teach themselves from the situation, getting more confused and ambiguous kind of position coming from here and there. And you can find them, oh, this is not iqab, and this is ibtila for everybody in this earth. But don't forget, guys, there is some people are missing around in this earth. There are some people that making sins. What do you mean by that? It's like we find this type of messages kind of ambiguous within the same setting. And we are questioning that. We want just to question it in order to extract some level of cohesion and reconciliation with what we need to get from the situation in order to act properly. And the last item here that I want to bring into the plate, and this is for everybody, it's like for our panel discussion that we have that I will present in one moment, and for our audience too. It's like as we are going through those situations, we want good interaction and exchange in order to deal with the situation in depth and not in the surface and superficial kind of satisfying answers from the justification perspective. So the last item we have here is the limitation of the religious views in approaching the situation when it is complex, when it's something is linked to other institutions, and the other institutions are already developed some best practice in prioritizing the ethical side of the issue or the legality side of the issue, or and we find ourselves as a religious institution are disconnected. They are not even here to interact properly to get what's there in order to come up with the right answer. And it's not keeping themselves at least humble to learn and to interact and to move on. We find them kind of competing to give their opinion on that stuff. So this is kind of type of concerns when it comes to deal with the meaning and cohesion, asking the why that stuff happening, the why of the event is coming, the why if it is kind of ibtila or trial, or if it is punishment, and just reconcile with oneself in order to move on. So as the first speaker here, it's not with us. This is Sheikh Abdal Hakim Murad. He's Dean of the Cambridge Muslim College and is kind of Britain's most influential Muslim thinker by Jordan Royal Islamic Strategic Studies Center. So we know that this is kind of Islamic Strategic Center that they are kind of ranking some people, and this is it was kind of ranked at one point one of the most influential Muslim thinkers. It was translated a lot of books, so he has a lot of contribution in terms of Ghazali, Ihya Ulumuddin in his translation. He has his own view as a school to develop new view, or at least spiritual, mystical view in dealing with the situation in our context. And he's coming from Azhar University. He's not somebody, he knows what he's doing. So he has kind of a good background, is knowledge. And we need to look at his contribution from critical mind. And this is one of the views that we want to tackle today. Please go ahead.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Taking a normally familiar stroll through Cambridge's city centre, I find myself, subhanallah, rather staggered by the difference these 2 weeks have made. The little roads and lanes call to mind the way Sundays used to be. They are almost deserted, but this particular day of rest will stretch on for weeks and months, and it's likely that at least some of these shuttered shops and restaurants may never trade again. I step over the prone and huddled homeless, still sleeping in their bags. This most dismal sight seems to be the only one which has remained unchanged. The sad, nervous queue attempts social distancing, towing a yellow-taped line, and not only from obedience. No one wishes to stand too close to Azrael, the angel of death. The consumer carnival, the Mardi Gras of our product-addicted age, is over. This feels like some kind of morning after, a hangover. We used to reach happily for the goods in the shops which shone and sparkled before our entranced and childish eyes. Now we hesitate and touch gingerly, reluctantly, as though touching the skin of a corpse. The world is fasting in a certain way. This is an imsak of capitalism, whose Belshazzar's feast has abruptly broken up. As for the daytime visitor to the stunned city centre, much is off limits. As a Ramadan hadith tells us, the devils are chained, sufidati shayateen. The wary shoppers are interested not in nice things, but in survival. Old habits of absent-minded browsing seem absurd. So heaven has given us to live in interesting times. We're entering the gravest global crisis in many decades, and it's right for Muslims to reflect, taking advantage of these newly long and quiet days. But before we do so, let us self-quarantine from the panicky and sensational media. Let us click away and block up our ears against the second-rate fumbling politicians. Let us look from our windows upon the eerie emptiness of the streets and consider what God might mean by this. Even the atheist brain knows ours for a time of hubris. We madly ravage and violate nature and walk upon the moon. Every other species cringes from us as ecosystems die. Our gamed financial system is increasingly parasitical upon the poor. From our human perspective, COVID-19 is an infection which disorders our world, but seen from the world's perspective, humanity itself has, over the past age, become a still more deadly disease. Like a fungus or a hookworm, we suck the blood of the host, multiplying insanely until the ecosystem itself, the planet which we vampirize, starts to sicken and die. Bani Adam, released from the natural restraints urged by religion, has itself become a disease in its planning and its wisdom, no more intelligent than a microbe. We have become a Qarun virus. And now God's world is paying us back with this invisible miasma which makes us afraid even to inhale. So small an enemy to have overthrown our world, too tiny to see, the corona literally a crown, this microscopic flimsy protein, this almost nothing, is now king of the world. Microbes then, which are part of the symphony of the world's balanced ecosystem, also belong to the army of God. At times they serve us through the divine names Al-Razaq, Al-Latif. Our stomachs and intestines are crawling with them, and without them we could not digest our dinners. On the land they then break down dead matter and return it to the soil. They limit populations naturally, maintaining the balance, mizan of creation, in which every species has the right to its space. But at other times, no less necessary for the balance, they serve the divine names Al-Qahar and Al-Muntaqim, the compeller, the avenger, and thus did Allah use them to strike down the oligarch Abraha and his elephant, his commandos and his marines. Allah says that He is with the poor and broken-hearted. أَنَا عِنْدَ الْمُنْكَسِرَةِ قُلُوبُهُمْ. The Quran makes us uneasy with its uncompromising prophetic arguments against status, pride, and the hoarding of wealth. The Sharia, with its zakat and its inheritance laws, aims to break up fortunes, smashing them with the hammer of God's justice. By contrast, the parasitic modern schemes of Homo economicus have led to a historically unequaled hoarding of wealth by the global 1%. And so, the great Quranic stories of truth-confronting power tell us again and again that Pharaoh is overthrown not by another superpower, but by a mere prophet in rags, a member of a despised subject race made up of imported labourers and immigrants, a man who has even doubted his ability to speak clearly. Barefoot he stands before the throne of Memphis, defying the magicians of the autocratic state whose wealth is directed insanely to the creation of marble mausoleums for the rotting dead. The autocrat turns away in scorn, and the plagues of Egypt fall upon his land. What power can his Minister of Defence marshal against the frogs, the blood, and the infection which covers him and his people with festering boils? Again, the smallest members of nature's kingdom are used by Providence to strike against a destructive and unjust megastructure of oppression and pride. That the smallest creatures can overthrow the proudest human hubris. And in our time, it is the virus that wears the crown and the mighty who are helpless and humbled. Look at the politicians across Europe who have persecuted the honourable traditions of Islam. It is they now who are forced to wear the niqab. Plague and pestilence are nothing new or surprising for Islam. Look in our texts and we find that waba, defined as an epidemic, and i'ada as contagion, and medieval Islam knew perfectly well that the result could be a massacre. Ibn Battuta, describing the Black Death in Cairo, records that 20,000 people a day were dying, and the imams would cry out, "Shahada, Shahada." The reference, no doubt, was to the Bukhari hadith that says that those who stay in a plague-stricken land, reckoning that nothing can befall them save Allah's decree, will receive a reward equal to that of martyrs. But because Muslims value medicine and their founder himself prescribed remedies, there was healthcare provided generously by waqfs. Pre-modern Muslim medics and ulama who thought about contagion assumed a social world in which human expectations from life and dunya were modest. Terrors about death and a love of abundance are more the sunnah of Nimrod and Pharaoh. They are the way of Abu Jahl, not that of the seal of the messengers. As the poets say, they reflect the materialism of the donkey, not of the Jesus who rides it. Our modern attitudes to death are very unrealistic, evasive and stressful. Atheist beliefs, which of themselves spread like a virus thanks to the unclean matter which has accumulated in our hearts, persuade many that clinical death is the end of ourselves. As the Quran describes such people, وَقَالُوا مَا هِيَ إِلَّا حَيَاتُنَا الدُّنْيَا نَمُوتُ وَنَحْيَا وَمَا يُهْلِكُنَا إِلَّا الدَّهْرُ. This is in Surah Al-Jathiyah. It means, they say, it is only our life of this world. We were dead and we live, and only time kills us. Such people are tragically terrified of death. In fact, this forms the major terrorism which dismays humanity in our age, the wicked threat of a meaningless and eternal nothingness. In the old Arabia, the Jahili Arabs had no confidence in life after death, but the man of praise, in his saddest moment of confronting them, was told, وَلَلْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنَ الْأُولَى. The next world shall be better for you than this. And in Surah Al-A'la, بَلْ تُؤْثِرُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. You prefer this worldly life, but the next life is better and more permanent. Death is a normal and natural part of our frail human reality, and its decree proceeds from an inexorable divine name, Al-Mumit, the Slayer. Pre-modern humanity saw it on every hand and knew how to cope. Rituals helped a good deal, but even more healing was the awareness of the divine wisdom and mercy. So the man of praise said, remarkably, Tuhfatul Mu'min al-Maut. The precious gift to the believer is death, because he or she moves on from this disappointing world to the world of pure mercy and meaning. True, the Holy Prophet also tells us not to hope for death. لا يتمنى أحدكم الموت. Let none of you hope for death, for our ending is to be by his decree, not our preference. We simply accept it calmly as an entire expression of the divine wisdom. Our British Muslim heritage offers much inspiration here. Amherst Thiessen, I like his poem on the Holy Prophet and Hazrat Abu Bakr as they sheltered in the cave from the murderous Qurayshi gangs attempting to prevent the hijrah by murdering them. The poem takes its cue from the Quranic record. ثاني اثنين إذ هما في الغار إذ يقول لصاحبه لا تحزن إن الله معنا. The second of the two, when they were in the cave, when he said to his companion, do not be sad, Allah is with us. Will he we live, no mortal power can take our lives away. Will he we die, to him we pass, no need to feel dismay. O may we thus through life's rough voyage with all its tempests cope, make God the rock whereon we cast the anchor of our hope. Come weal, to him we give the praise, come woe, on him we rest. In death is bliss to hearts assured, whate'er he sends is best. Thus the wali, the truly Muslim person, is of those whom la khawfun alayhim wa la hum yahzanun. They fear not, neither do they sorrow. For God has commanded us to say, lan yusibana illa ma kataballahu lana. Nothing will afflict us other than what God has written for us. So we mourn our dead, and this is a natural and a healing reflex, and we believe in medicine, but we do not panic. Death is a natural part of the glorious system of God's universe, with its cycles of birth, growth, flourishing, fertility, and death, a creation which contains jalal as well as jamal, rigor as well as beauty. As Ibrahim Haqqi, the Turkish poet, writes, what comes from thee is good for me, the rose's blossom or the rose's thorn, a robe of honour or my deathly shroud, good is thy gentleness, good is thy rigor. The current khawf and huzn, this epidemic of fear and sorrow which are paralysing our supposedly blasé and sophisticated world, are not only about death, however, but about the frailty, the precariousness of dunya as well. We need our basics from dunya. We have the right to our qut, our daily bread, but the mad love of consumption which has become modern man's lethal addiction is hateful to heaven. The Quran says, اعلموا أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو وزينة وتفاخر بينكم وما الحياة الدنيا إلا متاع غرور. Know that the life of this world is only a game and a play and adornment and boasting among you, and the life of this world is only the enjoyment of beguilement. Our product addiction is murdering Mother Earth, hence our idea that humanity is itself a disease, killing its planetary host. We are all the Qarun virus. But it is killing our souls and our societies as well. The believer is not much given to shopping, although she or he takes pleasure in treating guests well. The Holy Prophet's home was so simple that his door was not made of wood, but of a simple length of sackcloth. Kun fi dunya ka'annaka gharib aw abir as-sabil, he says. Be in this world as though a stranger or a traveller. So the believer in isolation is further from dunya. There is a detachment, and he revives some of the key benefits of khalwa or uzla, remembering the possibility of experiencing clear-heartedness when distractions and worldly pleasures are at arm's length. The Blessed Virgin saw the angel when she was on her own in the desert, and the same angel came to the best of creation when he was alone, yatahannath, in the cave of Hira. Our moment, then, is an opportunity to reactivate the honourable and richly rewarding Islamic customs of khalwa and uzla and i'tikaf. For many people, their confinement is irksome, and the purity of spiritual concentration seems like an unrealistic hope. Children fight and need exercise. We miss our friends. And this, the greatest pain, in Ramadan we are likely to miss the timeless majesty of our Taraweeh prayers. Our hearts miss the mosques. And in this distance we learn how much we need the beautiful and healing forms of our practices. And we realize also, with sorrow, how impoverished must be the life of the godless. But Islam has no priesthood and no consecrated churches. The Chosen One tells us that one of the khasa'is, the special characteristics of his ummah, is that جُعِلَتْ لِيَ الْأَرْضُ مَسْجِدًا. The whole earth has been made a mosque for me. In almost every home there is someone who can lead the prayer, even in a basic way. The fasting can proceed in a fully Sharia-valid manner. Our zakat al-fitr can still be paid. Islam is entirely doable in our seclusion. So let's relearn the traditions of seclusion, uzla, and let's not waste time but seize the opportunity. As we spend our days in peaceful detachment and our hearts calm down, in an uncanny way we can establish a feeling of connection with the souls of scholars of past ages by respectfully engaging with their works. We can, in some mysterious sense, become their disciples. We can enjoy their company. So we ask Allah, perhaps on the night of the middle of Sha'ban itself, that this opportunity for retreat be for us a blessed time of sabr and of shukr, of tawakkul and taslim, and that He decree a blessed outcome. We were all running too fast after dunya, and we need to stop and draw breath for a while. May we enter Ramadan, therefore, in a calm and well-prepared state of prayer and attentiveness to our duties and to the presence of Allah Ta'ala. May it be the best Ramadan of our lives, free of laziness and full of constructive family love, forgiveness, prayer, and the gaining of knowledge. May this self-isolation end, as Ramadan always ends, not with a sense of release, but with a sense that a spiritual and special time has been experienced and will be missed. Barakallahu fikum, wal afu minkum, wassalamu alaykum wa rahmatullah.
We're back here. It was 15 minutes, was kind of moving through different aspects of this situation, questioning the relationship with oneself as we are dealing in our normal life as with this attitude of pride and arrogance, to come down and come to the earth and see how kind of hopeless we are in dealing with this situation, and how kind of we are powerless dealing with the situation. So this is kind of the call to deal with oneself in terms of humbleness and vulnerability of the human being dealing with the situations coming like that. So another aspect of the spiritual that he was kind of revealing or kind of talking about it in his kind of thought or reflection is the relationship with the environment. From this environment that we control and we manipulate, and we see that we are seizing the whole rules that can that we have on this environment and ecosystem, and we get into the situation that we cannot do anything. So it's like it's a call from our attitude dealing with this relationship with this ecosystem and environment to another point. He was kind of talking about to dealing with the event as is, as an opportunity, as occasion to go back to oneself. Even in the history, they were kind of dealing with it with satisfaction and surrounding to accept the shahada in when there's some kind of hard event or black death or whatever kind of ta'un was coming into different situation. So this is kind of dealing with the event from the panic and avoidance and just waiting for it to go in order to do something else, to seize it as opportunity. This is an opportunity for every one of us to see what he can do in dealing with those events, to get back to himself, look at his vulnerabilities and work on his limited condition that he used to have. And this last one, when he was kind of talking at one point in this relationship with God and how we are going to the mosque in order to enjoy the beauty sitting of contemplating in the corner, nobody bother us and so on. And this enjoyment that we used to have in going to Taraweeh and timing. So it's question to us how far we are attached to this format over our attachment to the essence of this format behind it and beyond it. And it's a call to go back to oneself with this kind of halwa and self kind of awareness and working on oneself in moving toward kind of higher grades and higher maturity level in recognizing our different types of relationship, oneself, ecosystem, events, and what's happening to us and God subhanahu wa ta'ala. That was kind of that small summary just to make the point. We need to be critical about it. It's a mystical view. It's coming there with different kind of word, kind of hadra and wali and so on. We just let's go beyond what is the format and look at what is the special about this view. So inshallah we'll move on. Our brother Navaid need to leave maybe in 15 minutes and we need him, we need his opinion. We are happy to have him with us this evening. And you're very welcome, Sheikh Navaid, with us, and thank you so much for having and booking the time for us.
Barakallahu fik. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. My dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ramadan Mubarak to all of you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a blessed month where we get closer to Him, our sins are forgiven, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of the month makes of those who are destined for paradise. Allahumma ameen. As the title suggests, my topic of discussion in a short period of time will be how do we differentiate between trials and punishment, particularly as it relates to the coronavirus. And I've broken down my discussion into 4 simple points that 3 of them are in the form of a question, and then 1 is a sort of solution that I propose. So the first question that I want to propose is that if we wanted to define the term coronavirus or COVID-19 with something that has been mentioned in our tradition from the Quran and the Sunnah, what word would we use to define it with? And then what we find is that 2 of the terms that are used, one is waba, which could be translated as pandemic, and the other word is ta'un, which is more of a plague. And both of these words have been mentioned in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, particularly in Sahih al-Bukhari, for various purposes and reasons. Now, the reason why I start off by defining it, because in order to define is it a trial or punishment, we want to find the closest possible thing that we can relate it to make qiyas upon, or at least find similar reasoning within our tradition to maybe perhaps look at more of an objective maqasidi approach to it. So I think the way that we define it will also have an impact on this matter. One of the things that Brother Muhammad mentioned in the introduction was this concept of a dual logic. And this was something that's actually mentioned in Sahih al-Bukhari, where the Prophet ﷺ, when he referred to the ta'un, and it struck a specific group of people. So I want to emphasize that it struck a very specific group of people but even amongst those people were some believers. The Prophet ﷺ framed it as such that it was a punishment for them, but this was a mercy for those believers. And this is going to lead to my second point, where from a religious perspective, is it possible that something can be a punishment for someone and a trial for someone else? Now, how do we understand that? When it comes to trials, we learn from the Prophet ﷺ that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves a people, He tries them. And the most tested of people are the prophets and messengers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those that follow their way. Whereas punishment is a result of disobedience. It is when one goes intentionally against the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala while having the opportunity to refrain. So now, is it possible that it can be a punishment for one group of people and a trial for another? And I believe that yes, this is possible, and this is what we see from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, as reported in Sahih Bukhari that I just previously mentioned. Now, what is something to be careful of over here? So as Brother Muhammad was talking about this dual logic, I think the importance of humility is very important. That what ends up happening when we say this is a punishment for someone else, yet this is a trial for us, it may come across as something very arrogant and something very proud, and even vain and naive, where we are claiming a moral superiority and an ethical superiority, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ultimate judge, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what our final fate will be and what we will actually die upon. So I think it's very important to keep that in mind, that we should never claim moral superiority, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only knows how we will die. And nor should we say that this is a punishment for someone else and a trial for us, because unless you are the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that has certain knowledge as to who will be going to paradise and who will be going to the hellfire based upon revelation, then that is a different matter altogether. The third point I wanted to discuss is the relevancy of the question. What are we trying to achieve by finding out if something is a trial or a punishment? And in terms of the fruit of this question, I believe there will not actually be much fruit from the question, because we're trying to delve into the realm of the unseen, because we cannot be certain in totality or absolutely whether it is a trial or a punishment. So what I would like to propose over here is, rather than looking at is this a trial or a punishment, what we should be proposing as a question is, what do I need to do if this is a trial, and what do I need to do if this is a punishment? And what we will find over here is a commonality in the response. And what I want to share is 4 points. Number one, the importance of making istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is based upon the ayah in Surah Al-Anfal, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُعَذِّبَهُمْ وَأَنْتَ فِيهِمْ وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ مُعَذِّبَهُمْ وَهُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not punish them while you are amongst them, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not punish them while they are seeking His forgiveness. Now, related to this very point, or this very ayah, is the importance of sending salah and salam upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the hadith of Ubay ibn Ka'b, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in encouraging him to increase his salah and salam upon the Prophet, he tells him, "Tukfa hammuk wa tughfar dhanbuk," that it will take away your worries and it will forgive your sins. So the importance of sending salah and salam upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as point number 2 as our solution. Number 3, the importance of making dua, where the Prophet ﷺ says, nothing changes qadar except for dua. So meaning that qadar, dua has the ability to change our fate and to change our circumstance. And obviously this is one of the best ways to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the last point is the importance of enjoining good and forbidding evil. And this is a large topic within of itself. But this concept of enjoining good and forbidding evil has many ramifications. And what I will share over here is one of the hadith mentions that there was a man that lived amongst a group of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished due to their sin. So this man was punished amongst them. And the explanation that is given is that while this man lived amongst them, he did not enjoin the good or forbid the evil. And that is why the punishment descended upon him as well. And we have another similar narration where there was a righteous man that lived amongst a group of people, and they too were punished. And the Prophet ﷺ, he responded at that time by saying, إِنَّمَا النَّاسُ يُحْشَرُ عَلَى نِيَاتِهِمْ, that indeed people will be raised upon their intentions. So those that were amongst the people that were disobedient, yet they disliked their disobedience and tried their best to fight their disobedience, or at least educate people about that disobedience, then they will be raised upon their intention and they will not be included amongst those people. So this moral conscience that is required, because not all evil is meant to be changed by the hand or spoken out against based upon one's circumstances, but everyone can hate evil in their hearts when they see it and they experience it. So these are the 4 points that I wanted to share as a solution in the allotment of time that I was given. So to summarize my points, we would be looking at how do we define it as a waba or a ta'un. The second point, we would define it as, can we differentiate trials and punishment from person to person, or does it have to be universal, meaning a trial for everyone and a punishment for everyone? And then the third thing I proposed is, what is the fruit of asking this question? And then the fourth point are the 4 resolutions or solutions that I would like to propose, starting with seeking forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and istighfar, sending salat and salam upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, making dua, and the concept of hisbah, or enjoining good and forbidding evil. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Wallahu ta'ala alam. This is just in brief summary what I wanted to share with you. And thank you so much. Jazakumullah khairan, Dr. Nuruddin and Brother Muhammad, for allowing me this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sheikh Navaid, for your time and your input here, and we really appreciate. We would hope that you stay with us, because we will have kind of questions after a while. But thank you. That was really great and was kind of clear. And inshallah, we'll be taking it as kind of point for our discussion further until time arrive for the end. Yeah. Thank you. Since you are leaving, if I allow, I will have some flexibility here. Just I would like to ask small question here.
Of course.
So since we have kind of chance to have you here, so when we define the trial, and just to add more clarity for all of us, when we are defining it as trial or we are defining it as punishment, it's like it's our action that's making it either trial or our punishment.
Correct.
It's not based on our understanding. It's not a divine definition of this is trial for this one and this is punishment for this one.
No, not at all.
Is the way we react to it. We can make it either punishment for ourselves, or we can make it trial that we'll go through it and we get out of it as bigger, more mature, more kind of in good state. Can you just wrap it up somehow this way?
Jazakallah khair, Brother Muhammad. Thank you so much. So I think you've raised a very excellent point, and that is, prior to this incident, how were we as humanity? Were we excessive and transgressive, which would lead it to a punishment? And this is based upon an individual assessment of ourselves. Each individual should take it upon themselves to assess themselves, that prior to this pandemic, what type of individuals were we? Were we people that were transgressive and excessive, or were we people that were living within the boundaries that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated? And if that was the case, then this is definitely not a punishment, and it is a trial. Another perspective, and this is what you were raising, Brother Muhammad, is what happens to us through this pandemic. Through this pandemic, are we getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Are we becoming mature? Are we learning our lessons and hopefully changing our lifestyles? If that is the case, then that is also a sign of a trial and not a sign of a punishment. Because a sign of a punishment would be to distance, have a barrier between ourselves and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to have a barrier between ourselves and that which brings us closer to paradise. So if we rectify ourselves and get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and change ourselves for the best, then definitely we have treated this as a trial and have come out of it from a trial as opposed to a punishment. So jazakallah khair for that. Thank you so much, Muhammad.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your comments on that one. Inshallah, we'll be moving to the next kind of question that we have here. It's more about the religious response in terms of managing the internal affairs of religions, and specifically for our kind of Islam and our institutions dealing with this kind of issue. And I'm inviting here our brother Hisham to give his input. Please, Brother Hisham, you can go ahead. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Brother Muhammad. So, this pandemic's brought a lot of new issues for us as Muslims. And one of the most, I would say, shocking to the community was closing of masajid, we cannot go to Salat al-Jama'ah anymore for many of us. So this is caused a lot of shocks, waves through the community. A lot of people didn't accept it. A lot of people say, there was a psychological trauma against it, and we saw a lot of reactions through the community that our masajid would be closed, and responding to our community, to ourselves, just by saying, fuqaha are allowed to close masajid because of the harm is happening. That is not enough, because a lot of people are used. And one of the hadith Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that he mentioned in the 7 that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will shield them until His shield with no shield will be, is qulubuhum mu'allaqatun bil masajid. So people that their heart are tied to masajid or aiming towards masajid. So a lot of fuqaha toward the Islamic world, they come up with fatwa, and from the old opinions to the new ones, that of course we have to close masajid because of the nature of this coronavirus, and because of you have to have distances and all that stuff. So that's one point, and I think that should be considered. That's one of the main point. But in the same time, how to manage how to manage that. Now we cannot be in Jumu'ahs anymore, and we all know that the tranquility that we feel when we go to Jumu'ah and after Jumu'ah, tranquility when we go to the masjid and we read Quran in one of the corners of Quran, that when we feel that tranquility when we attend the Jama'ah and we make supplication to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after Salat, and when you say salam to your brothers and sisters into that, this is all has a psychological effect, and I think we have to deal with it. We have to discuss it, and we have to when we argue with or we have discussion with our brothers and sisters about this fiqh solution is not sufficient enough, but we have to deal with this aspect, psychological aspect. The other one is the aspect of people define this rules and saying that we have to open masajid, and in masajid there's khair in masajid, there's malaika in masajid, there's barakah in masajid, which is all true. But in the same time, define the nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and mizan, and how the creature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works, and how this virus works. Because this virus is one of the makhluqat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I believe, as Muhammad was saying on the objective of this point, is that how to make a cohesive ideas about all stuff so we can have a peace, and we can be waiting, to be back to our masajid, to be back to our jama'at, to be back to our jumu'at, to be back to see people in our masajid back, and in the same times without being ignorant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mizan and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creations in this world. So that is my point about this religious internal affairs. If there's any more point, we can discuss.
Thank you so much, Brother Hisham. And inshallah, yeah, we can get back just to some more question regarding this question here. Inshallah, just we'll move on to the next question. So we have the floor open for all our audience. And the next question is regarding the religious fatwa crisis when it comes to deal with the system, the complexity of the system and the reality. Our brother Nurdin, inshallah, just go ahead, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today I'd like to tackle this phenomenon of Islamic fatwa, especially when it comes to complex issues. And I wanted to give you an example. As I was reading a few weeks ago on the pandemic nawazil or events that are raised, there are certain questions that came up. And here I have for you an extract of a question. I'm going to read it in Arabic and then in English, where in a sense it's asking about who to save in the ICU when the medical equipment are limited. And this was commented, this question came to an individual scholar and a council of scholars, and they answered this. And this Professor Mu'taz al-Khatib picked up the question and the answer and made a comment on the question and the answer, especially on the answers. And that actually opened for us an opportunity to have a discussion around how our mashayikh tackle questions like this. سئل أحد المشايخ المشتغلين بمقاصد الشريعة من له الأولوية في العلاج من مصاب بفيروس كورونا إذا تزاحم المرضى ولم تتوفر المعادلات اللازمة للجميع، فاكتفى بالقول يقدم الأسبق فالأسبق منهم مخافة فتح باب التلاعبات والأمزجة. That same question was tackled by the المجلس الأوروبي للإفتاء والبحوث، فقد أجاب في اجتماعه الأخير بأنه يجب على الأطباء المسلمين الالتزام بالنظم واللوائح الطبية في المشافي التي يعملون بها، فإن وكل الأمر إليهم عليهم أن يحكموا المعايير الطبية والأخلاقية والإنسانية، ولا يجوز نزع الأجهزة عن مريض يعالج بها لصالح مريض جاء بعده. أما إذا كان الطبيب حائرا بين مريضين بحيث لم يعد له مجال إلا لاختيار أحدهما فيقدم الأسبق إلا إن كان ميؤوسا من شفائه، ويقدم من يحتاج إلى الإسعاف الطبي العاجل على من تسمح حالته بالتأخر، ومن يرجى شفاؤه على من لا يرجى، وذلك بغلبة الظن والتقدير الطبي. So in brief, the translation of the answer of the first scholar about who to save when the equipment is limited in ICU, the scholar said that Muslim doctor must follow the medical. So the first answer was to that you have to give priority to the patient who came first. And he's given that answer, and he gave the illah for it. The reason for that fatwa is that this will limit the room for lack of transparency or decision based on guessing. The second answer came from a council, the European Council of Fatwa and Research. And in that, they answered that Muslim doctors must follow the medical guidelines of their relative hospitals. Like each doctor should follow their hospital's guidelines. If the matter was left to them to decide, that is to the doctor, then they have to use the medical, ethical, and human guidelines. They are not allowed to remove medical equipment from one patient to another who came later in time. And if the doctor is in doubt between two patients and he had to choose, he must choose the one that comes first, unless there was no hope in his recovery. That is, in the recovery of the first one. They also say that patients needing urgent care are prioritized over those who can wait. And then they continue saying that and then that patient who has hope to recover should be prioritized over that who is terminal based on medical probability and estimation. So that's in a nutshell the answer of the council. Now this is the European Council of Fatwa and Research. This is an old picture, but it gives you a sense on how they get together to discuss these matters. So these two answers, as you could see here, reflect the mindset of our contemporary scholars when it comes to complex and sensitive matters. Some tend to lean toward an easy technical solution. In today's presentation, I like to discuss the problem of the Islamic scholars' opinion, and we will live the actual scenario, that is how to prioritize patient in ICU when you have shortage. That dilemma is a complex dilemma, and we're actually going to tackle it later on in the session of necessities that will be presented by Sister Hajja in a few weeks. And the pandemic case for it will tackle this as a case study, and it will be tackled by one of our alumni, Horizon alumni, who specialize in health and society and who has a special interest in health disparity, Ms. Miriam Burka. So the first answer, as we could see, based the answer on who first come, first serve, basically. And this is an answer that is devoid of clear grasp of the subject and its complexity, which involves public health, medical ethics, in addition to the seemingly absence of engaging the rules of Maqasid in balancing benefits and harm in this answer. The Sheikh's answer seems to focus on first come and first serve. And the priority in this argument has no measurable value because the opinion seems to consider arriving early as a criteria for access to medical care. And this ability to have access first to the hospital has no value, because if you live in the quadrant of the hospital, obviously it'll be easy for you to get to the hospital before somebody who lives away from the hospital. And those who live in big cities have better access than those who live in small towns. And those who are rich have better access than those who are poor. So it looks like the Sheikh is not paying attention that his fatwa is actually discriminating against certain people in having access to the medical devices. The consideration to close the means, which is really because he gave the reason that he's practicing said the dara'i. He was closing the mean of people actually guessing and creating lack of transparency in the decision making. But that closing of the means for people to play with the system made this opinion lean toward discriminating against poor and remote people who live in far away from hospitals. The Sheikh did not think of some other complex consideration to think and ask here. How if they are all these people happen to show up all at the same time to the emergency room? What then will be the value also that we are trying to preserve in this action? On the other hand, when we listen to the second answer by the European Council of Fatwa and Research, when they ruled that it is not permissible to switch the respirator from one patient to another who came later, is also a ruling based on order of arrival, which is the same argument that was used in the first answer by the first Sheikh. But there are few questions not considered here. How if a patient needs the equipment for a long time and there is a need for it by other? How about if the patient cannot live without this equipment? Like certain patients, they have to be on respirator to continue living forever. Would removing the equipment be considered homicide in these cases for these people who can't live without it? What if removing the equipment will lead to saving multiple patients at the expense of the one patient? What should we do? Is there a difference between those who are medically insured and those who are getting free healthcare? Should we prioritize those who are paying for their healthcare? So many questions are raised, and this showing the complexity of this. Now, there's a lot of other problems with the way even the council have answered and have neglected. Obviously, they did not get counsel from medical ethics. They did not get legal counsel. They did not understand the reality of guidelines, because currently there was, or at least during the time of in March, during the time of this fatwa, there was very little guidelines. Currently, we have a British guideline, a German guideline, and there is an American paper that was published in guideline for ethical guideline for how to deal with prioritizing and rationing absolute scarce healthcare resources. And I'm showing you here on the screen a table where some of the values, and we say that the problem with the first response is that it was devoid of values. And so values like maximizing benefit, treat people equally, promote and reward instrumental value, and give priority to the worst off. And so the final slide here is that this same paper have summarized and came up with 6 recommendations. And if you wanted to review this paper, it's by Emmanuel E. et al. In the New England Journal of Medicine, which is the top medical journal in the field of medicine. Jazakumullah khairan, and I'll look for discussion from the group.
Thank you, Brother Nordin. It's kind of an interesting situation when even as scholars, we need to question our self-sufficiency using the Maqasid rules. Blocking the means is one of the Maqasid rules, and bringing the masalih and the benefit is one of the Maqasid rules. So at one point, dealing with the Maqasid is complex as a field. So without even looking to the complexity of the system. So having one side view of all the Maqasid rules, it should be kind of questioned, and from Maqasidi perspective, and it should be even questioned from the maslaha, which is outside the scope of the rules by themselves. How big this maslaha, and how and what is the situation to apply specific rule. So I would like to open the floor here for everybody, inshallah, and I encourage everybody, inshallah, to ask. We have one question here that was coming from Brother Mustafa regarding the health care worker dealing with the COVID patients. Is that work considered a rewarded work, or could be considered as you are going to tahluka? It's like you are bringing the kind of the harm to oneself. And what is the Islamic opinion if someone in the family has been exposed and gets sick due to the hospital work? Can you brother Nordin, brother, go with this question, please?
So I don't want it to go into this as a fiqh fatwa.
Yeah.
But so basically, Mustafa, as a frontline health worker, and he deals with this patient on a daily basis. The government and the system have put together certain protections for all healthcare providers that have to strictly follow. There's a risk to any job. Some jobs have higher risk than others. I think if one follows the instructions, both at work and also how do you clean yourself and make contact with your family, the intention for you is not to maliciously or recklessly trying to disobey the instruction. Because if one disobey the instruction, then the question would be, would they be liable legally, and would they be liable? We know legally the governments in different countries are already making this illegal to contaminate people purposely. Whether you doing it now, the legal discussion that I was following is that the difficulty is to assess intent. Were you intending to infect the people you infected, or that happened by accident? And of course, the legal arena here vary based on the intent. And I think anybody who does their work, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا, that whoever caused for a life to be revived is as if he revived all lives. And on the other way, whoever caused a life to be taken is as if he taken all lives. I hope I shed some light on this interesting discussion question.
Any other input, Brother Hisham, on this one, since it has to do with the maqasid as general field, I mean?
So as Nordin said, I think we should not take it on the fiqh side, but I believe here the intention will be mattering. Taking all the measures, as Nordin said, that'll be once, and as long as you're doing your work, and that's how it does it, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala may help you on that. This is not an easy way, but I don't want to.
The other thing, Hisham, just briefly, the other thing is that if one succumb and fall sick and God forbid pass away, the scholars have talked to people who are staying home, or staying in the town that have the ta'un and die. They die like a martyr. What about somebody who goes beyond that, not just staying home and dying of the ta'un, but they actually are driving to the eye of the storm and confronting and helping the people who are affected by the COVID? It just makes sense that they will be rewarded for that, inshallah.
Yeah, and also sorry, can you go ahead? Yeah.
Yeah, there was a video today for a Muslim doctor that passed away due to coronavirus in the UK, and his funeral was attended by, I think, thousands of people in the street. I believe people will, as you said, will look at your work and look at your bravery and look at how much you're serving humanity too. And I think this is one of the maqasid, is to serve humanity. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make you, give you that skills and give you that opportunity, and you take it to the end of it, and I'm sure you will be, inshallah, a reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, and just in the same context, the reward, I don't think Brother Mustafa is looking for kind of reputation or kind of, but just to bring, to link it to the topic and to link it to our first session. Our first session, we talked about the levels of the maqasid. And one of the levels of the maqasid component, which is one of the dimension, is the group and the collective is taking precedence on the individuals. And this is from this perspective where it jihad, it makes sense. If somebody go by himself and kill himself, it's tahluka. But if somebody is defending the qawm, is defending the justice as a whole, is defending the benefit of the group, that's not the tahluka. And this is from the Sheikh Ahmed al-Risuni when he was classifying, and we had this kind of presentation, visual presentation, when we were talking about the levels, and one of them is the individual versus the collective. And just we need to keep in mind, inshallah, we need just to make the meaning reconcile with the meaning, not to feel obliged to go there because of the legal or because of the fiqh. Because those ones remove the meaning from your action within yourself. And you need to get the meaning deeper than that, because this is only one layer and you don't want to get stuck in there. Any other question, please, from the audience?
While we're waiting for questions, there's another angle for Mustafa's question, which is, we've witnessed in the healthcare system, many departments, many of our staff volunteering to go to the COVID testing, to help with the, although their area is not that. Now, the government have told us that they have the right to relocate any of the employee of Alberta Health Services to tackle the crisis. But what they did, they sent us a letter or a survey to all of us, and we were required to fill it up, where we said, this is our expertise, and we are willing to volunteer to help. And that was a huge response. We've seen also in the US, many people have came to the rescue of New York City. Many physicians left their jobs, left the cities, left their families, and they gave wada', they gave their farewell, and they went to help, because this is a noble thing. And this is our jihad today, right? You don't get, we as a healthcare provider, this is our jihad, this is our work.
Thank you. In terms, I want to get back to this managing the internal affairs of our religious kind of perspective that Hisham brought to us, and bring the question from individual perspective. When we get ourselves attached to the format of going to the mosque, and attached to the format of making the prayer with other people, and attached to the format of meeting the beloved kind of brothers and sisters in the mosque, and so on. From the Maqasid perspective, would you like to elaborate more on this kind of attachment and gaining some level of the control on oneself in our relationship with God?
Yeah, I believe the attachment itself is not a bad thing. From the tradition, I think we're recommended to have some attachment there. But I believe, as you said, and I think that we sometimes we forget the substance through the format. That I think that's the problem. And maybe as the doctor from England, he mentioned that maybe this is a time when we exclude, we try other aspect of the tradition, which is the exclusion, which is khalwa, or we can try other things now to do that. And I think a lot we forget that because we are used to the normal way of life. And now we were forced, and the problem with this coronavirus, we don't know how long it takes. We may be in this situation for a few months. So is that means that we're gonna lose our spirituality because we're not going to the mosque? I think the problem is when you attach your spirituality to the format. So the format has nothing wrong with it, but when you start saying that, well, my spirituality is only when I go there, and I think that's where the problem is. And maybe now we have to create a small masajid in our houses now to deal with the reality that we are living right now. And this is something we should think about it, because a lot of people are upset or traumatized, even traumatized over not going to masajid. And I feel weird on a Jum'ah. I'm not going to a Jum'ah prayers. I'm just doing normal Dhuhr prayers instead. It feels weird. You used to it for all your life. Now you cannot go to Jumu'ah anymore for a couple of months, maybe more. So that feels weird. But in the same times, I thought to myself last Jumu'ah, why I'm not feeling the same way. Just I have to create some spiritual for myself. If I'm not going to Jumu'ah, I need to feel close to that, at least, maybe not the same, but close to that. And I think this where as you said, the format should not be automatically the only way to our spirituality, to our imaniyat. And I think that's where we're struggling right now.
So from Maqasid perspective, just another question as we are waiting for people, inshallah, and we are almost to wrap up here. From Maqasid perspective, why this religious kind of institution? I'm not asking why to blame. I'm asking why just to question ourselves. As Umar radiallahu anhu, it comes to the people and find that everybody is doing some kind of prayer on his own, and he making it kind of a jama'ah prayer because he saw some benefit doing that in the mosque. Why we have this barrier to think from the Maqasid perspective, as people are not able to come to them to the prayer and to the worship places to come up with some innovative stuff, to come up with some innovative approach to allow people doing this together worship. It's not because is it allowed to be Friday Jumu'ah and to call it Jumu'ah? Is it allowed to be have a Friday? It's like we know that the Prophet ﷺ even make fasting remotely because Musa did fasting. Or you can pray the Shalat al-Janaza for the people that they, even remotely if you are not with them. And even we are fasting for Arafah, that even if we are not in Mecca and so on. So this remote concept, we find that a lot of resistance coming from the religious institution, dealing with it with some level of flexibility, and going straight forward to the legality and to the fiqh perspective. Is it really acceptable this way or not?
I think I'm going to quote here Sheikh Ibn Uthaymin rahimahullah. I think he has a great answer to your questions. I think most of us are having these feelings when we saw a masajid close or something, because we have this this rhetoric that Islam is under attack, Muslims are under attack. When masajid close, there's something wrong with it. ابن عثيمين رحمه الله قال تعليقي على صحيح البخاري: إغلاق المساجد والكعبة وما أشبه ذلك للحاجة لا بأس به، ولا يقال إن هذا من منع مساجد الله أن يذكر فيها اسمه، إن هذا لمصلحة أو لحاجة أو لضرورة أحيانا. So Sheikh Uthaymin rahimahullah, he said that it's permissible to close masajid and even Kaaba for something that is there's a need for it.
Yeah.
And we should not say that this closing are what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described in the Quran, the people that doesn't allow his servant to the masajid, but in the contrary, it is something that has benefit or even necessity, in that time. And I think that's where we're living. So I think this is this confusion in the head of people, because we have some people right now saying, there's an attack on Islam, that's why they close masajid. And we say there's a big debate in Egypt and other countries that, when there's an opinion about a scholar or an institution about something about religion, is very, there's a war between, political war and political ideas. Yeah. And maybe that's what creates confusion in the head of people. But I think if a lay person like us understand that, okay, if I cannot go to the masjid because there is a real threat in the masjid and real needs to stay home, and we all know that by now, I think, as you said, why not being creative? Why not create a small masjid in our houses? Why? I was talking to my wife and saying, how are we gonna make tarawih? Let's just do him as a family, and we can lead. We can lead the tarawih, in a sequential way. So I think, as you said, this is what maybe is creating confusion, and there's a war of ideas and war of.
If I may, there is a simple psychosocial explanation to this. It has nothing to do with the religious aspect and opinion, which is people are confined in their houses, and going to the masjid, especially in Ramadan and the Eid and the Jumu'ah, is a festivity. You get together with people, you have a coffee afterward. So you're earning to that. You wanted to go back to that kind of freedom, which is restricted now. So the whole idea of being restricted in your movement and freedom is impacting people big time. And we have to prepare ourselves psychologically for the long run, because nobody knows. Only Allah knows how long this will last, and whether it's going to stop and come back again. And so we have to put systems in place that make us flexible and look for other ways of connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and engage ourselves intellectually and spiritually.
Thank you. Thank you for this last word for today. So we went today through some responses of the religious institution and scholars in regards of this pandemic. And we seek some level of gaining some meaning and cohesion within oneself, so we don't get confused, we don't feel paralyzed, and we feel that there is kind of some path that we can dig deep in order to get this reconciliation with oneself, this reconciliation in the intellectual level and in the psychology and spiritual level, and to create some level of creativity or something like that. And maybe people can feel freedom to create between two families, whatever, or online salat or something like that. It's just up to the people to feel how they can bring the spirituality back. Even Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, when he was asked, oh, I cannot bring khushu' unless if I close my eyes. I told him the Prophet they didn't use to close his eyes when he's doing khushu'. But if this is the only way that you can get it, go ahead for it and get it, because it's beyond what is the formality there. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody here. Inshallah, next week we will be welcoming our brother and our Sheikh, our Doctor, Jasir Auda, in his tackling the methodology of the Maqasid, and he will be taking Tuesday for his conceptual framework to present it and to get some answer about it. And he will be running Thursday for a case study dealing with the framework of the Maqasid that he is developing, and having interaction with him in terms of question and getting some benefit from his knowledge. Thank you, everybody, and inshallah Ramadan Kareem to everybody, and may Allah accept from all of us and take it on opportunity. This is the golden word, taking it as an opportunity. And thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.